Hello, and welcome to this episode of Not a Lady, a Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman podcast. My name is Sarah.
And this is Kelly.
And this is episode 4 of season 1, titled Law of the Land.
This is also our first episode after we have officially launched, and our podcast is officially out on a bunch of streaming services, which is very exciting. Just because the intro in the last 3 episodes, we were just, recording to ourselves. We're still recording to just ourselves, but we didn't have any interaction or fans. And
well, we really didn't even know who was going to listen, and I think we both have been so blessed and really surprised.
Blown away. Yes, you guys don't understand. I thought it was going to be like our mom and like 2 friends.
No, little did we know that the Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman fandom is alive and well and thriving on the internet. So Thank you for the many warm welcomes that we have received.
Yes, thank you very much. We're enjoying reading all your comments, not only about the episode, but about what you've enjoyed. And we've gotten a number of emails from some folks, which has been really exciting for us.
Yeah, we really love hearing from you, whether that be comments on Instagram or Facebook or
Twitter.
But I think what's been really cool is some of our discussions. We've actually had some people write in, and I would love to take the opportunity to share with you guys some of the thoughts that some people have had. I won't read their entire emails, but it was actually kind of based on some of the discussions we had. So the first email we actually received was from Jenny. And Jenny actually knows a bunch about Dr. Quinn. She came in with her knowledge, and when she commented on the pilot, when we were discussing kind of a lot of the switch of the actors, she wrote in and said this: for the characters that changed after the pilot, no one knew for sure how the show was going to turn into a series. They originally shot the pilot as a standalone movie, thinking it wouldn't take off and be anything more than that. So I think the man that played Jake, that would be Cole Meany in the pilot, had already been signed for a role on Star Trek, and the show got picked up, so he was unable to come back. So I totally forgot that Cole Meany was in Star Trek. But actually that makes a lot of sense why he headed that direction, because Star Trek's kind of a big deal. She also said, as for Robert E., I know Beth Sullivan wanted Henry Sanders, but he was filming in Georgia, I believe, and couldn't make it back in time for the pilot filming. He thought for sure he had missed his chance to be on the show, but then she still wanted him. So I'm not sure if she only brought the other man as a stand-in for him in the pilot. And then the last little thing she said, also, did you know that Jane wasn't originally supposed to play Michaela? They had another actress for the part, Mel Harris, I believe, who dropped out at the last minute, and they hired Jane the day before filming the pilot started. She was actually sick while filming most of the pilot, too. I can't see anyone else playing Michaela as well as her. And I did not know that, so that's actually
I know, that's
cool
insane.
Story.
I just have to say that a lot of you guys know way more than, way more than we know. Actually, I'm like, wow, we're really actually not qualified at all to do this. Half of you should have your own podcast on Dr. Quinn because you guys know so much. So it's been interesting, to get some extra knowledge on that. And it is really interesting about Jane because I can imagine the day before filming having to
that's nerve-wracking.
Put a whole character together. Yeah. We also got an email from Julie who wrote in with some very good thoughts.
One of the things that she brought up was in episode 2, The Epidemic, we talked about Robert E. making the coffins, and I was kind of saying why don't we have a town carpenter? And she actually made a comparison to Little House on the Prairie, where actually in the show, Pa, what is that, Michael Landon?
Yeah.
Yeah, he often would have to do necessary woodwork himself. That was maybe not a universal skill, but if you're living on the frontier and you have to learn how to do stuff. And so she actually also said that maybe Robert E. was handy with a hammer, and it was a way to bring in extra income. So that might have been why he was the one to build the coffins, which is an interesting thought. I also learned about something. Julie kind of introduced this idea. I had to look this up, but she was like, Beth Sullivan has confirmed that the show, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, didn't have a show Bible, resulting in some inconsistencies within the show, which we kind of talked about, like, oh yeah, we know that there's no such thing as a perfect show, and there are going to be things that, we're going to be like, that doesn't quite make sense. And it doesn't in any way lessen our love for the show. But I had to look this up. I was like, a show Bible. And so I looked it up, and this is actually actual terminology for sometimes for long-running series. They have a book that's called like a show Bible that has basic information about characters, locations, just for consistency, especially for long-running shows where they have a lot of different writers, so that they could look in and know what's happened already in this character's relationship, all this kind of thing. And so it was really interesting. I didn't know about this, but it totally makes sense that a lot of shows would want to have this. But what Julie was telling us is that Beth Sullivan, the creator, did say that there was no show Bible for Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, which is why maybe sometimes certain characters' relationships or just things that happen may not always line up perfectly. And I thought that was a really, really cool fact to learn.
Definitely.
All right, so we really love hearing from you guys, and we hope that you'll continue to write in, whether it be via our website, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, email. We love receiving it all. So, jumping in with Season 1, Episode 4, Law of the Land. This episode first aired the 16th of January, 1993. It was a Saturday. Directed by James Keach, which, so interesting. James Keach was an actor in Walk the Line, which is a Johnny Cash movie.
Not what I thought you were going to say. James Keach used to be married to Jane Seymour. You know that, right?
Oh, no, I didn't look that up.
Yes.
They were married at this time or later?
No, I believe they were married in... Actually, yes. What year is it? What year did you say?
1993.
So they got married in 1993.
Well,
what
they
day?
probably would have filmed it in 1992. So
they probably were
maybe
married.
They met.
Yeah, I know they got married in 1993, so... Yeah, that's what I thought you were going to say, and then you were like...
No, I just thought it was super fascinating that he went on to act in the biopic Walk the Line, which was the Johnny Cash movie.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
This is the Johnny Cash episode. He also is going to go on to direct 26 more episodes of Dr. Quinn. So this is not the last we will hear from him, which I guess now knowing that connection, that kind of makes sense.
Which, by the way, I also forgot to mention, so her and James Keach were married, and they actually named one of their sons John after Johnny Cash. That is true. Yes.
I didn't know that either. Well, the writers, Beth Sullivan, did work on this episode, as well as she had a co-writer, Tony Perling, who would go on to also write or co-write 13 more episodes of Dr. Quinn. So we have a team of people working on this episode that are going to stick around. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, right at the start of this episode, we are in the clinic now. I guess we can call it the clinic now since
officially.
It's officially the clinic after the last episode. But we have, is it Emily? I'm like blinking now.
It's Emily's son.
Emily loves Dr. Mike, her and her children and her husband, I guess of all.
Well, her husband's dead.
Okay, wow. Yes, thank you for reminding us in the kindest way possible.
Like 2 episodes ago.
But yes, we see Emily and one of her other children, not the one that Dr. Mike delivered, but basically we find out that her son swallowed a penny.
Snow swallowed 7 pennies.
Oh, you're right, 7 pennies. And
which I don't understand.
How you do that? Maybe he thought it was just like a game.
I guess.
I'm not really sure.
Why do children do anything?
Yeah, which, funny enough, actually coins are the most commonly swallowed foreign objects.
Ew.
Yeah, kids swallow all sorts of stuff. And so Dr. Mike actually gives her castor oil, which basically the reason that she would give that is it's just a lubricant, so to help those coins pass through. Because most coins would pass through your gastrointestinal system very easily, unless they got stuck in the esophagus. But pennies are pretty small. I think they're only like 2 centimeters in diameter or something, so they're pretty small. The chance that actually your gastric acid might dissolve some of them is pretty likely. So most coins would pass in 4 to 5 days, probably before that, probably more like 48 hours. But she does give them castor oil, which is also used in laxatives, so it gives you an idea of what it's used for. Although they wouldn't do that today. They probably would not give you castor oil. Probably wouldn't even recommend laxatives. Obviously, we have imaging now, right? So we could do an x-ray and see if it was occluded anywhere. But for the most part, they do what they call is a wait and see approach to
what is
see
occluded?
Basically, to see if it's stuck somewhere, anywhere in your system, basically from your mouth to your you know what. So. Yeah, gotcha. That's kind of how we open up this scene. And then before we know it, they hear gunshots and they go outside because, Dr. Mike, she's got to know what's going on.
She's pretty nosy in this episode.
Yeah, she's definitely a part of the town.
Yeah.
Like the prominent.
Yeah, for sure. And lo and behold, the man in black himself, Johnny Cash, we see him come walking out of the saloon. Interestingly enough, Johnny Cash was 60 when this episode was filmed, and if it was released in January 93, I'm assuming they filmed in 92, and actually 1992 was the year that Johnny Cash was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So This was after a pretty big year for him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a good place to mention this, but he wears all black for most of the episode. Yeah. And I thought that was really an interesting choice. And so I did some research, and this was the man in black was actually kind of how Johnny Cash was known. And
in real life, you mean?
In real life. And the reason he actually wrote a song describing why he wore black. And in this song, some of the lyrics were, "I wear black for the poor and the beaten down." Which, once I found that out and kind of learning a lot about, he had a real passion for advocating for prisoners and advocating for those in need and law and justice, and thinking about all that, I'm like, wow, I bet, Beth Sullivan and Tony Perling, it really seems like they really geared this episode toward some things that he was really passionate about and looking out for the poor and the beaten down, which I think we have major examples of that in this episode. Right. So I thought that was really interesting.
No, it is.
And within seconds there's a guy who's shooting at Johnny Cash,
who we should just mention. Yes, Kid Cole. He goes by Kid Cole. Yeah. Although we will probably refer to him as Johnny Cash because, he's freaking Johnny Cash.
Yeah. And so they're out in the street and everybody comes out to watch. And I made a note that Orson Bean's face when they're about to duel just made me smile so much. He's so excited to watch a gun battle between a nobody and a real gunslinger like Kid Cole.
Yeah, you guys, you can't see what she's doing right now, but it's weird.
I'm reenacting drawing my gun. I like the part where he's like, "Somebody go get the sheriff." And they're like, "There is no sheriff." And he's like, "Then somebody better go get a doctor.
Yes. No, I love that. I definitely love that too. And you kind of are confused, right? You're like, you think he's talking about for him? Or at least I had the assumption the first time I saw this. You think about somebody should get the sheriff, someone should get a doctor, meaning he thinks he's going to get shot. But that's not the case. The case is that he knows that he's going to shoot the other guy no matter what. And so he basically tells the guy, if you're going to draw your gun, you might as well do it. And he does. And of course, Kid Cole gets to him first.
Shoots him. I mean, basically in the chest or the shoulder. I don't know.
The shoulder, because he tells Dr. Quinn right after that he avoided any vital organs. And she was like, I'm sure he'll thank you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a cool moment because he's like, "Oh, is this your fella? I'm so sorry." And she's like, "No, as of right now, he's actually my patient. Thank you." And so, yeah, and that's when he mentions about the vital organs. And we
get a kind of, I feel like a little bit of a nod to almost our title, right? Because he's like, never met no lady doctor. And she's like, well, I've never met a gunslinger.
Right.
But exactly. It seems like she must have heard of him, though. Or at least she just recognizes that everyone else seems to know who he is.
Yeah, because basically you have Lauren and Jake.
It's an honor to see you shoot somebody.
You're like, sorry, someone just got shot. Why are we celebrating? But yeah, I mean, this is their version of celebrities, right?
I was going to say, let's remind ourselves this is the same town that very much enjoyed watching a woman get a tooth ripped out of her. Like, yeah, that was entertaining for them when she was in excruciating pain, so.
Yep, exactly. And so they take this guy who just got shot into the clinic, and Dr. Mike kind of tends to him. And then immediately after we see him, he's still in the clinic, and Kid Cole's outside. And basically he's like, how much do I owe you? And she says $5, which is a lot of money, you know. And he even admits, like, it would have been cheaper to buy him a coffin or something like that.
She notices his cough then, and she knows what it is.
Yeah. Because I think she says something like...
He asks about the climate or the air, whatever, like...
Yeah.
And she like,
says
clear
probably
for...
good for consumption. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which consumption, actually, the reason that, so consumption is tuberculosis. I feel like most people are semi-familiar with tuberculosis.
Really?
You're learning things? Yes.
I didn't know consumption was tuberculosis.
Yeah.
And isn't so the reason consumption super contagious, or is that...
As is TB. Unless you are so TB, you can be in latent TB, which means that the bacterium is present in your body, but it's no longer active. That's kind of the easiest way to state that. And so that's why a lot of people, including yourself, who have gotten the BCG vaccine, without going into too much information, not a lot of places in the world, but there are some places in the world where they actually give a vaccination against TB. It's called the BCG vaccine. And a lot of times we give it to healthcare providers and such, people that are at high risk for getting TB. So technically a lot of those people...
Is that the shot we got to go to Senegal?
Yes. So so it's just like kind of like a flu vaccine. It's inactivated. You're putting it in. But like, let's say if you were to go get a TB test right now, because you've had that vaccine, you would test positive when you get that TB test. So I'm assuming that Kid Cole is in latent. He has latent tuberculosis because TB is very contagious. It's spread through air droplets person to person.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So he's obviously in latent, which means he... But it is a little weird, right? Because if he was in latent, he probably would not have symptoms. But he has symptoms, so it's a little odd to me. I'm not really sure how to make sense of that, but...
How do you get consumption?
Well, it's a bacterium. It's Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And so mostly, like as I stated, the most common way that you're going to get it is from person to person, someone else transferring it through those air droplets. And so in the 1800s, I mean, that was... consumption, which by the way, the reason it was called consumption is because one of the main symptoms of it is weight loss, and so it kind of consumed you, right? Consume means to use up, and so that's why they called it consumption. And along with weight loss, you would have night sweats, you'd have fever, mostly blood containing mucus because it attacks your lungs.
Is there a cure, or is it pretty much a death sentence?
So at that time, yes, it's basically a death sentence. In fact, in the 1800s, it was killing 1 out of 7 people. So what they thought the best thing to do was in the 1800s, they would send people to sanatoriums. Did you ever hear about this? They would send them to sanatoriums that had like a big yard and like a back porch and stuff, because they thought it had to do with air quality. And if you were exposed to good air quality, like a healthful climate could change the course of disease. We now know that that's not true, but we see this in this scene as well, basically, where he's telling her like, oh, my doctor told me if I just settle down and live somewhere with like clear air, like it'll be better. So yeah, that's kind of the deal with that. So very interesting. But that would be why he's coughing up blood, because basically the bacterium have attacked his lungs. So yeah, that's what I know about tuberculosis. It would be interesting I'm not really sure, like, if he isn't active tuberculosis, why he would not. But again, I mean, we've found that they don't know a lot about what the spread of disease is.
Right.
So, yeah. And he makes a funny comment at the end. It's kind of cute. He's like, oh, well, like, maybe I'll stay. Like, you can't beat the view. And it's this weird moment when you realize he's
flirting.
Talking about her. Yeah, which is like, he does like a weird little eyebrow raise. And I was like, what just happened? Like, yes, it's Jane Seymour, we know. But also, like, you could be her dad.
Yeah. I mean, what's you gonna do? He's a cool guy. The next scene, we are at the homestead where they're having dinner outside, and Ingrid is over, and this Ingrid is played by Jennifer Youngs. So we didn't actually hear her name other than in the credits in the epidemic, right. But she's a Swedish immigrant, Ingrid, and she's come for dinner with Dr. Mike, Colleen, and Matthew. And I don't know if Kelly, did you catch this? It just made me laugh, especially right after talking about Dr. Mike's cooking in the epidemic. But Matthew turns to Colleen and goes, "You cooked, right, Colleen?" And then Dr. Mike's like, "Of course, Matthew."
To confirm that he did not just invite someone over for a horrible meal.
Yeah, which I think it's like, I mean, I guess she could be insulted, but it's actually kind of cute. Like,
it's a very like mom-son thing.
Yeah, he's trying to impress this girl, right? Yeah. And Ingrid kind of gets to introduce herself that she's from Stockholm, Sweden. But before we get to really learn too much about her, it becomes very clear that she's scarfing down food, and then she's running off to be sick, and I feel so bad because it's probably so embarrassing for everyone. Yeah. But also, like, I think they do a good job of kind of this realization that Matthew has, that Dr. Mike has, that these people are starving. And it's, it's right under their noses, and they didn't know until this moment, really.
Yeah. And it sets the episode up for future events to come. Mm-hmm. But I think it's nice that Dr. Mike goes to talk to her instead of Matthew, because who knows what he probably would have said. But she's malnourished, right? And so she has this sudden moment where she's intaking a lot of food. I'm not really sure it would happen like this, but I also don't know everything.
You mean that quick?
Yeah, because what she is experiencing, or at least what I think she's experiencing is something called refeeding syndrome. And what refeeding syndrome is, it's when someone who is malnourished begins to intake food again. And because their body is suddenly beginning to digest and metabolize, there's a huge shift in the balance of electrolytes and fluids, which are, for those that don't know a lot about the body or medicine, that's huge. Fluids and electrolytes, that balance is something that your body has so much control over, it's ridiculous. And things like magnesium, potassium, calcium, phosphorus are extremely vital in your organs working, especially the heart. So a lot of people that are malnourished have severe cardiovascular issues and events because of this. And so what you should do when someone's malnourished is you limit their caloric intake slowly, and their fluids, in early stages when you start doing that, like what they call nutritional rehabilitation. But, at this point, she probably hasn't been eating for a while, we're assuming, and so she intakes very fast, and so it makes her sick. Her stomach, anything, like basically even in her mouth, like the saliva in her mouth has not been metabolizing those carbohydrates and stuff. So again, I think obviously that wouldn't happen crazy fast like that, but I think that they do a good job explaining basically what's going on. And Ingrid even says like, "Oh, I ate too fast. Like I shouldn't have done that," Yeah. But yeah, basically we're given the clue that the immigrants are kind of starving at this point, and you kind of have to wonder what Matthew's feeling, like how weird that must be for him. He probably is thinking, what can I do? Could I do something? Yeah. So I'm pretty sure, what's the next scene?
Well, so it transitions back to town where we see Matthew. Olive has actually given Matthew a job.
Olive, by the way, who we haven't seen for a while. So we have Olive coming back in
one episode, yeah, she was in
it felt like a while.
But she's given him a job mending fences, and so then actually Ingrid's brother, I don't know that we learn that he's her brother yet,
Right.
but her brother John, played by Christopher Kelly, comes asking Lauren and Olive for work. And I just a question that I have is, he asks for work and Olive says, well, with half the mines closed, you all are looking for work. Which this is a question that actually never gets answered or addressed in the episode. But I'm
Why
just
are
like,
the mines closed?
yeah, like, why are half the mines closed? I don't know if maybe it had to do with the epidemic. Like, I'm really not sure, but they kind of just dropped that piece of information, which is why these people are starving, because a lot of them don't have work. They're not getting paid. So they're resorting to looking for work. And then, of course, the scene kind of ends with them digging through Lauren's kind of garbage compost bins, and he freaks out and whips out the gun and is like, that's for my pigs.
No, it is very, I did not enjoy that scene. I love Lauren, but I was like, okay, one, dramatic, a gun, and then he's like, that's for my hog, and I'm like, literally?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's the compassion if they're going through your trash?
But I think it's their way of showing, okay, the immigrants are causing...
No, it's definitely, you'll remember, like, we talked about how in a show you want to show, not just tell, right? They very could easily just say, oh, these people, which they kind of, have already done in the last scene. They've showed with Ingrid's situation, they've shown us, okay, they're malnourished, they're starving. In this scene, they're showing us, not telling us how desperate being hungry is making them. So I think it's really good storytelling of not just being like, the immigrants are starving and it is making them desperate, right? But instead they kind of use very realistic situations to show us what's happening in the immigrant camp without actually having even been in the immigrant camp yet.
Yeah.
So I definitely applaud that storytelling. I think it's really well done. But it's definitely, I don't know if it's really hard to watch, especially when we recognize that, like, global world hunger and immigrant issues, like, this is definitely not something old, right? This is actually still very present in today. But the next scene, we're in the forest, where we had kind of learned earlier, Brian is so excited because...
he is going hunting with Sully today. This made me so happy. His
little outfit.
He's just the cutest. He's got little, like, things on his face. It's just so freaking cute. And so, they're together and they come across a deer, and, Sully realizes pretty quick that the deer is already injured. From what, we're not really sure.
Well, he says, I think someone shot it.
Right. And so they actually get close enough to the deer to see, and Sully states, it's their duty to, I don't really know how to kind of put the deer out of its misery.
Yeah. Well, Sully says the Cheyenne have a practice of releasing the spirit.
Yes. And so he takes the spirit basically by breathing in, and Brian's like, no. No, you, like, give him his spirit back. Like, he's not allowing you.
Did you find it a little, and I get it, like, he's a kid, right? But did you find it a little strange that he's on his first hunting trip, but he doesn't want Sully to kill the deer?
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I'm an animal lover, so I would be like, why are you on a hunting trip at all? And part of me is like, he's too young to understand what killing maybe he's not too young to understand killing to eat, right? Like, they're going to eat it. They're not just killing for sport. That being said, it's kind of, I don't know, it just stood out to me as a little strange. Like, he's like, no, don't kill it. And then it also stood out as strange to me even when they were about to shoot the deer and then they realize the deer's hurt, so they don't shoot it, like...
Well, I think because he wanted to do, before he did, because he had a knife, he was ready to take its life. He wanted to...
It was a suffering animal.
Correct. And he wanted to partake in that that Cheyenne custom
that's
to be able
true.
to do that.
That's a good point.
Yeah, but no, I totally had that thought where I'm like, so that's kind of what they were coming here to do, was like, to kill.
I mean, I get he's a little kid though, right? So it's different. Like looking at an injured animal.
Yeah.
That,
I mean, honestly, I probably would have done the same thing. I've been deer hunting with our dad numerous times, and I've never shot anything. But probably when it did push come to shove, I probably would have been like, actually.
Well, I mean, it's so cute because Brian's like, Ma can fix him up.
Oh, it's really cute. He basically is like, she fixed my leg and it's good as new, so she can definitely do this. But
I mean, and we also have to talk about, this is obviously a actor deer, because that deer is so calm around people.
Well, what did you expect?
No, I mean,
do you think they just went and got a random deer in the woods?
No, I just...
And we're like, hey, can you guest star on Dr. Quinn?
No, but I'm just saying, like, if it were a real wild deer, even if it was injured, like, we've seen, like, our family on more than one occasion has helped an injured deer either, like, out of the road after it's been hit by a car, or, I don't know, were you with us that one time, Kelly, when the deer had jumped the fence and its foot got caught?
No, but I heard about this.
Its foot got caught, and mom, like, got out of the car, and, like, she was worried that its leg was broken, but she, like, grabbed its leg, and it was flipping out, and she, like, pulled it out of the fence, and it took off running. And it was really cool, but that deer, like, didn't want her anywhere near it, and she was just trying to help it. No, like, I get it. I'm just saying that was just something that I observed, was like, wow, that deer is so calm. Like, even for an actor deer, so calm.
Yeah. So we see Matthew coming back from, I guess, mending fences for Olive, and passes through or by the immigrant camp. And this is where we kind of make the connection that John is Ingrid's brother. And we see there are other siblings as well.
There's 7 children.
Yeah. Yeah. And she says, now that our father is gone, he's trying to find work and provide for us. And this was pretty interesting because if you guys remember, in the epidemic episode, their father did pass away. And we saw that the Reverend and some other townsfolk actually brought his body back.
It was actually Matthew. And
Matthew. They bring his body back to the immigrant camp. And just wanted to give a shout out here to Michelle J. Markham on Instagram, because she was telling us that it's actually a Swedish funeral custom for the bodies to be returned to the families like 1 to 3 weeks after they've died. And so Sarah and I kind of during that episode were like, we don't really understand why they did that. Like, should probably focus on the fact that people are getting sick. But that's probably a really good reason why they did that. And so we're reminded here that Matthew was a part of that, even though the Ingrid we had back then is not the Ingrid we have now. But Matthew actually tries to give them, it's kind of like a basket full of food, fresh vegetables and things like that. And, John is like, no, I want to be able to provide for my family. But instead they kind of come to this agreement that he will work for it. They will take the food, but he wants to work for it. And so we now see that John is going to he is going to help Matthew mend the fences for Olive the next day. They kind of make this agreement and they shake hands, and
I like it because, sometimes it's so easy to get annoyed with characters who are like, I don't want to accept charity,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think this is a nice moment where it's like, he's not unwilling to accept the help, but he wants to earn it, right? And he wants to feel like he is a part of like providing for them, not just being like, yeah, give us help and we'll just sit around and do nothing. Like, I think that's a really nice moment.
And I think it gives Matthew a way to feel like he can actually help Ingrid, because at this point he probably feels a little helpless in that whole situation, for sure. And so we quickly switch back to the homestead, and this is funny because sure enough, Sully and Brian come back with this deer that they have.
Well, and Dr. Mike's like chopping wood badly, Which I think is kind of weird because we actually have seen her successfully chop wood earlier. So maybe this
She's having an off day.
Maybe. Well, and maybe this is where that show Bible thing came in, where it's like, what has she successfully learned how to do on the frontier yet?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Which honestly, watching this the first time, I probably did not notice that, but only because we've like watched it again and are talking about it, I know that. But
yeah.
But
yeah, they show up with the deer, and Brian's all like, you gotta fix him. It's a female, it's a doe. You gotta fix, but he keeps calling it a boy. You gotta fix him up. And she's like, I'll try. And then there's like this awkward, like there's this moment, I guess it's almost like they're a little bit of like parents, right? Where he's like, you shouldn't have told him you're gonna try. And she's like, you shouldn't have let him bring the deer back. Like both of you give in to this cute little kid so easily.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? Yeah. And so Brian wants to name the deer, and he asks Sully, like, oh, like, is Sully your first name? And he's like, no. He's like, what's your first name? And he's like, it's not a good name for a deer. It's not even a good name for a man. You know, and he kind of, like, rushes it out, and they're like, sorry, what did you say? And he says, Byron. And Dr. Mike, her acting, she's like, Byron? Like, she's, like, just heard, like, the most outrageous thing in the world.
I think, do you know why I think it's probably surprising? Because Byron is actually quite a sophisticated English name.
Is it?
Yeah, but the meaning of the name is probably why he doesn't like it, because the old English word byre literally means cowshed.
Yeah.
And so the French and American definition or like meaning of the name Byron is from the cottage. So like, yeah, I mean, I get it. But at the same time, I think it's just, so like the most famous Byron
Lord
Byron, which is, the famous
See,
poet.
I know some English things.
Yeah. And like I'm a big fan of like the Byronic hero, right? It's like the anti-hero, whatever. So I think that's probably why she thinks it's funny, because considering she's, an educated Bostonian woman, she probably is familiar with the works of like Lord Byron or whatever. So to have Sully, who's like the epitome of mountain man, have the first name of Byron is probably a little jarring.
Yeah. It makes me laugh, but sure enough, Brian's like, okay, Byron.
His doe, right?
No, it's cute. I love it.
Actually, that reminds me of, there was a family when I worked in China, and their children, they had guinea pigs. And they always got female guinea pigs. But somehow these female guinea pigs, these 4 kids, always ended up naming them male names. So they had like Franklin, the female guinea pig. And they had Gus Gus, named after the mice in Cinderella, the female guinea pig. Bean, the female guinea pig. I mean, Bean's kind of in between, but...
Bean is, yeah.
It is just kind of funny. But, with kids, yeah, Byron's a great name for an injured doe that you brought home to your doctor mom.
To fix, I know, can you imagine? We transition into the field where Matthew and John are mending fences, repairing fences. And they take a little break, and it's interesting, right? Matthew gives him an apple, kind of as like we're going to take a break, have a snack thing, but John immediately is like, nope, going to take this home for my sisters. So kind of like good insight into the fact, like he's thinking of those things, right? So if we didn't know already that they were starving, we definitely know now. And he looks out at all these cattle and just makes the comment of like, so many for one person, and I think that is a pivotal moment that makes Matthew think like, actually, yeah, you're right. Like, one could probably feed your whole family, couldn't it?
Well, I think more than the whole family. Like, he's like, one could feed all of you.
Oh, for sure.
Insinuating like that whole camp.
The immigrant camp. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is true, for sure. And so there's no, like, they don't even have to tell you what happened, because we immediately move on from that. But it's kind of this assumption of, okay, we know what's probably about to take place.
Well, I don't think we know for sure, but we're left being like, oh, are they going to do that? And actually, the first time I watched this episode, I really thought that John maybe went back and did it by himself. You know what I mean? Like, when I first saw the episode, because I was like, oh, maybe Matthew put the idea in his head, but I think there is this stigma, like, oh, Matthew, because Olive even says this at one point, like, you would never do something like that, right?
Right.
And yeah, so they actually, I think they kind of leave us in suspense where we're like, oh, what are they, is someone gonna do that, or what's gonna happen for sure? So the next scene, we're back in town where very quickly, they actually don't give us very long to wonder, because Olive shows up with leftover pieces of the carcass of a butchered cow, and Lauren's like, who would immigrants?
Right. And immediately the assumption.
But then what's weird is Olive's line is, we can't be sure it was him. Not we can't be sure it was them.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice that.
Well, the only reason I think I noticed it is because I had the subtitles on. Because I like to watch, and I don't know any other people out there, but I like to watch.
I like
them
too. Yeah.
And so I was like, that's an interesting choice of words. But
maybe they knew. Because part of me is like, did they know that he was helping Matthew? Because they probably wouldn't agreed to it, honestly. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. But that was really interesting.
Well, and she basically... So this is why I was glad I had the subtitles on, because she says, cow rustling is a serious offense. And I was like, cow rustling? Never heard of this.
So I do know the historical context. So cattle hustling, cattle raiding. This was especially a major issue when there were Mexican rustlers were a major issue during the Civil War, which would have been 1861 to 1865. And during that time, there was accusations that the Mexican government was accused of supporting this habit of stealing cattle, sometimes stealing to sell, sometimes stealing to kill and eat. But what's interesting is that cattle hustling or cattle raiding was actually not totally viewed as like, it wasn't inappropriate to have vigilante hangings, right? Where civilians would take it upon themselves. You discover someone has stolen a cow or butchered a cow. It's not outside of more or less, it wasn't necessarily looked down upon to go outside the justice system and hang them or shoot, cattle thieves, which really brings a lot of context. Because I think watching this episode, it's very easy to be like, oh my gosh, these people are insane. They think they are God and can kill this man without any consequences. But actually, this particular crime during that era historically was a crime that technically could be outside of what we would consider the law. And right. Lauren says this later, like, it's the law of the land. You don't steal cattle. And it's more or less the cattle owner's right to kill or hang, or hanging is killing, but to to track down the people who did it. And what's super interesting is one of the efforts that was made post Civil War to end cattle hustling was moving from open range grazing, where you literally just sent your cows out into nature and had maybe a cowboy out there watching them, but then starting to fenced grazing, which really fits in with why Matthew's out there mending fences, probably because Olive, remember, has been south of quote unquote the border or whatever, right? Been in kind of Mexico territory, where she probably came face to face with authentic, real, Mexican rustlers, cattle hustling. So I think there's a lot of context actually that really works in here, and we see like they were actively taking measures to prevent this from happening, and it happened from within. And of course we discover because the person who was putting up the preventative measures was a part of that. Yeah. Whatever. So it's all super interesting. But yeah, they immediately not just Lauren and Olive, but like, do Jake and Hank have nothing better to do in this?
Nope, they don't have businesses that they need to run to survive. No.
For
no,
real.
And that's what's weird is you have that conversation where she's like, we can't jump to conclusions. And then like immediately there's like a group like coming through town.
And they're
being
raiding.
Like, let's get them, boys.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they, Dr. Quinn just happens to be there, doing a medical check on I guess, some of the, I don't know if it's Ingrid's family in particular, just all the children there. But yeah, they like go straight for John and John's tent.
Well,
and
I think actually it's kind of like John starts to run and then it's like, okay. And then he runs in the tent and they find, some meat. Of the meat, which, again, doesn't look great if you're trying not to look guilty. Running's probably not a great move, and also, like, having raw cowhide.
He probably felt really guilty, though, right? Because he's not a thief.
No,
Well, and then, Dr. Quinn is immediately... I don't know that she even really gets much of the context, but she's immediately all over Olive, like, you have to stop them. To which Olive replies, I can't. And this will be a repeated theme, which is fine if you want to establish that Olive is powerless here, but I think it contradicts what actually ends up happening in the end, where she's like, I can't do anything, I can't stop it, I can't. And then, spoiler, in the end, she basically does.
She does.
But, I mean, it's fine, maybe it was a feeling she had more than an actual, like, helplessness, but then Cole... Mr. Cole.
That's weird.
Mr. Cole, Mr. Johnny Cash comes walking out of the saloon, kind of seeing the commotion, and John takes off. And at first, I was like, where is this boy running? Like, where does he think he's gonna go? And then it makes sense. He books it for the church. So, as I was watching this, I was like, you know what? I don't really know the history of this claim of sanctuary.
I immediately flashed back to the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
I knew it. I knew
we
it.
Must be related because literally that's the only thing I know.
Well, no, so same. That would be probably my first introduction, the Disney version. Obviously, we're not talking the book or the Disney version, which is not accurate to the book, but love. But so I actually looked up traditions of sanctuary and found that sanctuary itself, like giving sanctuary, was something that you can trace back to early Greek and Roman culture. But the original idea of sanctuary was a place where persecuted persons could and should be given refuge. And it's actually a universal notion that you find in a lot of different cultures. But interestingly enough, this actually for the Christian church, there's actually biblical scripture in the book of Numbers, the book of Deuteronomy, and Joshua that talks about giving sanctuary not to innocent people who are being persecuted, but actually to those who are guilty and would like the opportunity to be able to atone for their sins, which is really interesting. And actually, I'll talk about this a little bit later because I've been thinking about this a lot, about the justice system and this idea that America is one of the few countries in the world that has a justice system that is, we have what's called consequential justice, which basically means our form of justice is giving people consequences for their actions, whether that be fines, jail time, whatever. Whereas the Old Testament church was known as a rehabilitory justice of rehabilitation, where we give those who have made mistakes the opportunity to be rehabilitated, to atone for their sins. And so part of gaining sanctuary into a church was you were given the opportunity to atone for your crime, to atone for your sins, for whatever mistakes you made, in contrast with being just being punished and taking on the punishment, but actually doing something to atone for that. Which, anyway, I just thought that was really super interesting, and that's actually the biblical basis wasn't, an innocent person can seek refuge, but it was actually a guilty person could seek refuge in a holy place, in a church sanctuary, and be given the opportunity to atone for whatever they did. Right. And that's what happens. We know John is actually guilty. He did, not alone, but he did kill a cow and steal a cow that was not his. So I think it's really cool. And the Reverend immediately doesn't even ask really what he did, doesn't even, be like, oh, well, tell me what happened. He just is like, he's asked for sanctuary and I'm going to give it to him. And you'll have to go through me. And it was really fun for me to watch who stood with him, right? Dr. Quinn, Robert E., Emily, Myra, Mr. Cole, Matthew, Horace. And I'm like picking out some of those people, right? Robert E., part of a persecuted group of people, right? Myra, definitely, persecuted is probably the wrong word to use, but someone who's looked down upon and often judged.
Discriminated against.
Yeah, yep. And I think you brought up earlier, Emily must be just, whatever Dr. Quinn does, I am with this girl. And, Matthew for obvious reasons. And Mr. Cole, I don't really know what his motivation is.
Other than he's just a honest guy. I mean, it's hard to analyze that just because we don't really know the basis of the character.
We don't know a lot about him, which that's what I mean. We're just not given a huge amount of context. I wonder why he chooses to stand on those steps. Maybe, you know what it could be? It could just be there are people who are just anti-mob mentality, which, the mob mentality, which is a group of people who stand up and say, we're going to do this because we're the bigger group of people and you can't stop us. And just being a person who's like, you know what, I don't care who's right, who's wrong. I'm not giving in to this mob mentality or, in a way it's like a different form of quote unquote peer pressure.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, when the crowd then leaves because they're not feeling overwhelmed with need to attack the house of
Church.
God, Dr. Mike and the Reverend are inside treating John.
Right.
And Sully arrives, and Dr. Mike is like, we need to wire the marshal in Denver. And then they're like, oh, no, we need more than just a marshal. We need a sheriff. We need someone to enforce law and order in this town. And so she's like, we should advertise.
We should place an advertisement.
Well, it's interesting. She almost entrusts Sully to kind of be John's bodyguard. She's like, I need you to protect him, defend him, whoever comes through that door.
I would want Sully protecting me.
I'm sure you would. Something that I just thought was interesting, I was like, what's the difference between a marshal and a sheriff? I don't actually know. And so I looked up the history of the marshal, the U.S. Marshal, and actually the first marshal, the first U.S. Marshals, there were 13 of them, instituted by George Washington in 1789, one marshal for each colony, then state. And basically the job of the marshal was to conduct death sentences for those condemned in a federal court. So they're not a judge, they're actually just the person who enforces whatever decision a federal court decides. And then interestingly, until the Secret Service was started in 1865, which would have been probably sometime around where we are, they also investigated counterfeiting, counterfeit money and stuff. So the marshals were also pre-Secret Service before the Secret Service was instituted. Ooh. I was like, oh, that's really interesting.
Fancy.
Yeah, so Dr. Mike goes to town to place her advertisement, and again, I guess, listen, Hank has great hair, but really, he must either be brushing his hair or styling his hair or causing trouble with Dr. Quinn, because he walks up to her in the middle of the street and totally like threatens her.
He's like, best watch your step.
I know. And I'm just
is
like,
that a threat? And
bro.
also stupid to do that while Johnny Cash is within walking distance.
Well,
like,
and that's, he comes up and is like, yeah, you better be on your way. And he backs off. And so her
But why does that happen? Is it because that they saw her be so, like,
yeah,
want to protect John and, like, stand up for him that he's, like, angry about it?
I mean,
why is he so invested is my question.
Yeah, no, for real. Why do you care? It wasn't your cow. I have this problem too, like, especially with, like, Jake and Hank and, you know, there's some of those unnamed cowboys that seem to do with whatever those two do. Yeah, like, why does this matter to you? But maybe this goes back to their entertainment, or what do they do? You know, it's just fun for them. Yeah, no, she's definitely seen as a sympathizer. And she's, you know, this is Dr. Quinn's crowning glory, is that she does not walk. She swims upstream when everyone else is swimming downstream. And that's what we love about her. But I think as far as the townspeople go, they don't like that about her, right? She doesn't do what a woman's supposed to do. Stay in the back and say nothing, you know? And so she was a vocal sympathizer and part of, you know, challenging what they believed was their right? Like the big ideas, and they'll say this later, we've put people to death before for crimes. So how dare you think that this situation is any different? It is our right.
It's unwarranted. It's
our right to enforce consequences on a crime, you know? So the Dr. Mike's definition or hope for a sheriff is strong moral fiber with a knowledge of the law, which I'm like, that's setting your bar pretty low, I feel like.
Yeah. We see Ingrid and Matthew go to the church to see John, and the Reverend is like, it's very dangerous to bring her here, and Matthew's like, I mean, I had to. And this is kind of where John makes Matthew actually promise that he won't tell that he helped.
Well, this is the first time we learn as
I was going to say,
members.
Yeah, this is the first time. I don't know why that was, like, such an assumption for me that I was like, oh, yeah, of course. But I guess it's not. It's really not. This is the first time we're like, oh, okay, so Matthew was there. Matthew did help. And John's reasoning is that they need somebody to, you know, take care of Ingrid and her siblings. And if John's not going to be around for it, he wants Matthew to promise that. So...
Well, and I think Matthew kind of also, you know, he's like, it was my idea. So really, you wouldn't have even done it or thought of it if it wasn't for me. And so I think he feels really responsible. But John makes him, promise I need you to look after my family. Which I'm like, this is, in a way, it's not strangely, but it is, I don't know. I had a flashback of Charlotte and Dr. Mike being like, I need you, promise me that you'll look after my children.
Interesting. Look at that connection you just made. Wow. Wow, listeners. What about that? I'm just saying my brain doesn't work that way. Yeah, that's true. And I'm pretty sure right after this, is this where they're back at the homestead?
No, this is where we get to sheriff interviews.
Oh, I forgot about this.
The Reverend is asking them, why should you be sheriff? And I got a whole lot of history to throw at you. You ready?
Oh, gosh.
Because I just love this about Dr. Quinn. They literally just throw in like 2 or 3 words, and you're like, unless you're a history buff, you probably don't even notice, but I'm like, holy crap, that's a reference to this thing. So basically, the Reverend, the first guy who he asks, why should you be sheriff? The guy's like, well...
Are we going to tell me about all these gangs?
Yes! He's like, I ran with the Younger gang, and the James gang, and the Dalton gang, so if any of them came around and caused trouble, I'd recognize them right off. Which... Oh, no big deal. Who are any of those gangs? Do you know? Do you know have you heard of any
course
of them?
not.
These
No.
are like, so this is like the cream of the crop of American outlaws. So the James gang and the Younger gang actually at one point would join up and become, if you look them up on the internet, you'll actually often see them as one gang, like the James-Younger gang. But you ever heard of somebody named Jesse James?
Yeah.
Really?
Sure.
He's like one of the most famous American outlaws ever. Okay,
Sorry.
listeners,
Little behind here.
should do your research on Jesse James because he actually has a really one of his getaway stories is like the most insane story ever. He like basically jumps a canyon, like his horse jumps a canyon to escape.
You mean Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron?
Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron, inspired by Jesse James's escape.
Okay, so
Yes.
basically
Yes.
I do.
Yes. So the James Younger gang, I think there wasn't like a specific date range that they were active because the James, there were two brothers, Jesse and Frank James. They were brothers. And then the Younger gang was made up of 4 brothers, Cole, Jim, John, and Bob Younger. But during this time, like many other guys kind of cycled through being a part of the gang. And what's super interesting is their gang was born out of, they were Confederate guerrilla warfare soldiers. And then so they started this guerrilla war fighting kind of in support of the Confederacy, and then the Confederates obviously lost the Civil War, and so they became outlaws. And they became an official gang in 1868, so we're kind of in this right kind of era that we're kind of estimating Dr. Quinn's taking place. But following the Civil War, they were the most feared, most publicized, and most wanted outlaws on the frontier. And they were Missouri-based, but actually had criminal records in at least 11 states. So these guys majorly got around. Now, what doesn't quite fit, but I guess they just wanted to throw in another gang, is the Dalton gang was a gang that was active from 1890 to 1892. They actually weren't around super long before a majority of them got killed. But it was 4 brothers, Bob, Grat.
Why is everyone named Bob?
Robert, I guess, was a popular name. Grat, Emmett, and Bill. And Bill was actually never involved in any of the, they mainly did bank heists and train robberies, but he was like a spy. Anyway, so 1890, 1892. So these 3 gangs, the James Younger gang, they kind of ran at the same time, but the Dalton gang would have been much later in 1800s, but I mean, mentioning them, they were a pretty iconic group of brothers. So I don't know, I just thought that was like really crazy and kind of cool that they just threw in there like the most. I really recommend, like, if you want to learn about your real frontier outlaws, like, these are the gangs basically to start with. And they're not necessarily nice guys or anything, but like, I think their stories are super fascinating.
There you go.
But then we transition to a guy who's like, you know what? I should be sheriff because I just could shoot everyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the funny thing is when he's like, well, I forget what the Reverend asked. Well, what if something happened to this person? And he's like, well, I'd have to kill him or shoot him too.
Yeah.
And Lauren, if you watch Lauren standing in the background, he looks like a little kid, like at Christmas, like he's like looking at Jake with
Happy,
like the
like he
biggest
wants
smile
that.
on his face, like, oh, this guy's great. He's just gonna shoot everybody.
Well, basically, because he says, he's like, and if a kid stole candy from the shop, he's
Yeah.
like, I guess I'd have to shoot him
Yeah,
too.
that's what it is.
Oh,
And
okay. I didn't look at Lauren's face then.
He's in the background, so he's not really the focus, but I just was like, wow, Lauren is so into this guy who's just gonna shoot everyone.
Yeah. And what we get from this whole scene is no one can shoot, nobody's qualified, no one really cares about enforcing the law, but Kid Cole outshines them all when he shows that his shooting skills are beyond par, and kind of puts himself in the running, in which the prominent townspeople decide that they're going to go with.
She calls them the committee has decided, which I'm
Committee that
surprised.
she made up.
I'm surprised that they let her be on the committee, because the rest of the committee is like Jake, Lauren, the Reverend, and 2 other guys who we don't know.
Right. But they decide that Johnny Cash is going to be Colorado Springs sheriff, and they're going to pay him 4 bits a day.
Yeah, which is 1 bit I looked up around this time was about 10 cents, so not a lot. And part of Mr. Cole's reasoning for doing it is because he was like, I wanted a peaceful town. I guess I'm going to have to make me one.
Right. Which is kind of funny, actually.
Yeah, no, it is. The next scene, we are outside Bray's Mercantile, where some guy named Radford is beating up,
like beating up,
and everyone's just cheering him on. And can I tell you, the scariest part of that whole scene is when they legitimately shove him underneath what looks to me like a real horse, and I'm just like, I mean, I'm sure it's like a stunt guy, and I'm sure it's a stunt horse or whatever, but that as a horsewoman who has been under, not by choice, right, but like been fallen off and been under horse hooves, it's like the scariest place you can be.
But he really does. Sorry.
No, go.
I was just gonna say, he really, like, they're really fighting, like beating each other up.
Yep, and Matthew goes to join in, but then Sheriff Cole stops him and breaks it up.
And he actually breaks the entire fight up.
Yep.
Dr. Mike checks on the immigrant, boy, to make sure he's okay and hasn't sustained any crazy injuries, in which she actually suggests they go back to the clinic.
And she gives him some food.
Yeah.
To which Lauren Bray says, if they're gonna get food, they need to get food like everybody else and hunt. And I'm like, excuse me, Mr. Bray, when have you ever hunted? Because I'm pretty sure you get a lot of your food from farmers or the stagecoach.
They did hunt, and you didn't like whose cattle they hunted.
Well, I
just
don't.
Kidding.
That doesn't really count
I
as
know.
hunting.
I'm just kidding.
I just was like, wait a minute, Lauren Bray.
He wouldn't have a business, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think really the purpose of this whole scene is, she says they're farmers and miners. They don't know how to hunt. And he says no one asked them to come here. And she says no one asked any of us to come here. And I think all the Native Americans, of history are in the back saying, shout it louder for the people, for the people in the back. Because, who do you think you are, man, that you're above these people?
Later that evening, we're back at the homestead, and Brian actually asked Dr. Mike, why was that immigrant boy getting beaten up? To which Dr. Mike says, what does she say? Some people just don't like other people.
Just don't like other people because of where they come from. It's not a good reason. But
right.
It is a reason.
And that must just stir Matthew, because he's like, I need to tell you something. And before we know it, we've got bricks coming through their window. We hear shouting, tell those Swedes to go back where they came from.
Calling them Swede lovers.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so cute. Brian's like, don't hurt Byron. So worried about the deer.
His deer.
Yeah. And so we're kind of wondering what's happening. They're getting attacked. She's trying to protect the children. And then we hear gunshots, in which we find out that Matthew shoots. I'm sure he wasn't aiming to kill. He was just shooting to scare them off. But it's this very, serious moment, right? Where Dr. Mike's like, oh my gosh, you just did that. And it's probably the gun that Olive gave him that she wasn't too keen on in the first place.
It's not. Because I think she gave him...
Oh, you're right. That was a pistol.
She gave him a pistol, and he pulls out a rifle. But, I mean...
So observant. You're right.
No, but it's... I thought of that scene where it was like, well, here he is,
being the man of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and even before that, like, the reason I think he whips out the gun is because they hit the oil lamp and the curtain catches on fire. And Dr. Mike, I don't really see how it happens, but I don't know if she gets hit herself in the hand or the glass shatters on her hand, but we know she gets hurt. And so, yeah, he shoots. She's freaking out. And then, you know, as if we couldn't hit any other heights of dramatic, he's like, I'm the one who helped him kill the cow.
I'm just as guilty as he is. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually like a very serious scene.
Yeah, he just confesses.
He does. He said, I have something to tell you. He wasn't kidding.
Yeah. And I think what happens right after that, where her first thought is like, how could you? They're blaming the immigrants, like they're blaming this entire group of people now for something you and one other person made the choice to do. And so I think that's pretty significant, like, realizing the consequences of one very small decision that one person can make, only thinking small picture. Like, of course, Matthew didn't realize not only the consequences that this would be if John got found out, but it's now affecting the entire immigrant camp. And we'll see it again later, like how the people are treating all the immigrants is 100% related to this decision.
To this incident.
That that he and John made.
Yeah.
What do you think about Dr. Quinn being like, well, first of all, she's like, you shouldn't have made that promise to take care of the girls, which, again, I find ironic when you think back to...
Now that you say that.
Right? Like, when
Is she saying that she regrets doing that? No.
I don't think it's that. I think probably she just feels like he's too young to be saying, I'm going to take care of this family. But I think it's also, you know, she's always more willing to put herself in harm's way than to let anyone else.
Of course.
And so, like, what do you think of when she's like, don't tell anyone, I'll handle it. I'll pay for the cow and you can work off for the money. Like, how do you think that is the right decision, or what did you think when she said that?
I think it surprised me, because I'm like, I would think what we know about Dr. Mike and her choice to be just like, she's been very honest and transparent and truthful this whole time, that I would think, I mean, I even flash back to silly things about like Brian, you know, breaking the candy glass, you know, and her being like, you're gonna stay and clean it up. Like, there isn't this moment where I expected her to be like, no, you're gonna go tell them what you did. You're going to apologize. You're going to, you know, do whatever you need to do to rectify this. But I think it's a more serious offense, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, he could die because of it. And so her instinct as a mom is to be like, okay, let's fix this. You know, if it's a money issue, which, I mean, at this point, she's not killing those cattle to eat. Olive, I'm talking about. So she's thinking, okay, well, if we give them the money for it, it will, you know, fix it. I think she wants to feel like she can offer some sort of, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Recompense.
Yeah, just be able to make up for what
I think
did.
I agree with what you're saying. Like, it is really surprising. And I think you're right, because it's a more serious issue. She doesn't want him to, she sees what they're willing to do to this kid outside of the law, you know, because of this. So I think she's fearful for Matthew. But it is really surprising, because I think she has so far been this person of strong moral character, like, above, you know, being like, I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. We're going to make things right. We're going to do the right thing. And it doesn't feel like she's sweeping it under the rug, but it's, you know, the kind of parents who are like, just let me handle this. And then you're like, well, what is the child learning from the situation, right? Like,
right.
He still killed and stole, you know, a cow. Like, that's bad, like, you know, and so, like, I get it why she's like, no, don't say anything. But at the same time, I think it is surprising. And not surprising at this. Like, we understand why she makes the decision, but I just didn't feel like, I'm like, that that's not the right decision, you know? Like, that's not what you're supposed to do.
But who really knows unless you're a parent and your kid's life is in danger. And she probably also was like, I don't want to say proud, but she was probably glad that, I mean, he cared about their lives and wanted to do something about it. He just didn't go about it the right way.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And so she does. She shows up to the mercantile and tries to give Olive money, in which she's like, there's enough here for 2 cows, but, like, you're not responsible. Like, it's not your job to, like, try and do this. You know, you guys didn't do anything wrong. And Matthew's like, you know, like, what if I did do it? And like you said before, she's like, you would never do that. Which, that had to be like a knife to the heart to him, you know, like, oh gosh.
Because we know that how much they really love and respect Olive. Well, right. But then we see Lauren go, well, then we just have to hang you too. No exceptions.
Right. And then Dr. Mike is probably like, okay, great. Made the right decision.
Yeah, like, okay, this is why I didn't want him telling. And this is where I kind of just wanted, because so what she says to Lauren is, if you kill that boy, it will be murder, not justice. I don't know much about politics, to be honest. What is justice? But I think it's an interesting perspective of how do we view justice as you did this, so you get these consequences for your crime? Or do we view justice as you commit this crime, here's how you can atone or be rehabilitated so that you don't return to that same pattern? Because if you look at, especially like people who end up in jail, mostly are going to end up back in jail, kind of thing, if they, you know, for short-term sentences and stuff. I think it's a major theme that we could process in this episode in and of itself, because even with the conclusion of what Olive tells the boys at the end, you know, you're going to work for me to earn that cow back, you know, just this idea of what is justice? Is it revenge, avenging, or is it giving the opportunity for people to be better than they were?
Well, on a less serious note, we're back at the homestead again, and Byron somehow escapes from the barn into the house, in which Wolf, well, I don't actually know what this dog's name is, because Wolf...
So far they've only ever called the puppy the puppy.
Okay, so the puppy, you know, then also chases the deer into the house, and there's this moment where they get locked out of the house. I don't know how, and Colleen's like, push harder. And, you know, they open the door, and we don't really see, but it's insinuated that they've made a mess. And, of course, Dr. Mike gets home later, and Brian is like, you know, like, you can give me a spanking, but please just let me keep Byron, you know.
Yeah, because she says it's a wild animal. It doesn't belong here.
Which is, yeah, valid. I mean, I think the idea was that they would rehabilitate
it.
Thank you. Rehabilitate. What did I say? Recuperate? It would recuperate. Yeah, rehab the deer, and it would go back into the wild. And at this point, I'm like, it's been a period of time. I'm not really sure what's happening. Sully might have had a point.
But guess what? She gives in, to, just like she did
because
the last
it's Ryan. Have you seen his cute little face? Yeah.
When Dr. Mike returns to the town, I think the next day, Hank and Jake and a bunch of other guys are setting up a kind of like a dummy gallows where they're lighting it on fire, and Dr. Mike gets all mad and rushes over to where Sheriff Cole is singing. And the song that Johnny Cash, because you can't have Johnny Cash in an episode not have him sing, right?
Actually, though.
The song that he's singing is actually, the title of the song is I Ride an Old Paint, which I looked up the history of this song. It was actually a poem first, but it wasn't collected and published as a song until 1927. So technically the song would not have existed in the 1860s or whatever, but Carl Sandburg was the one who collected it and then kind of turned it into a song, which is interesting. But Sheriff Cole says there's nothing he can do about the men protesting and lighting the dummy up. But Dr. Mike is really worried that they're not going to wait for a trial, that they're going to do what they want.
We are back in the store.
In the store.
And this like bothered me. I think they put it in. Well, I guess I should say what happens first, eh? There is a man who we assume, well, we find out he's an immigrant, and he is in the store getting food, getting like little sweets for his children, and Lauren tells him how much it is. I don't remember. It's not that important. And he says, okay, like put it on my tab, put it on my credit. I don't remember the exact words he used. And Lauren's like, your account has been closed. Like, you don't have an account here. And he's like, what's up? I've always paid you on time. Like, what's the problem? You know, like, here's 50 cents. I'll give you what I have. I will pay you back. You know I pay you on time. And Lauren is insistent that you don't have an account here. You need to pay in full. And where is this coming from other than the fact that he's an immigrant and the whole town is just, like, ticked off about this incident and, like you said, is treating that whole people group wrong because of it? So he, you know, what does he choose to do? He decides to bolt, in which people in town track him down. He runs off. They have the goods. But this kind of, like, incites this, like, anger where they're like, you know what? These immigrants, they're not
doing whatever they want.
They do whatever they want. They will take and steal whatever they want. Like, this is over. We are hanging that boy. This is too much. And so do. Lauren gets his gun because apparently that's what he does when he wants to feel like he's in control.
Yeah. I think, and this is where I kind of come back to that conversation we had earlier, where I think to Jake and to Hank, which I'm like, again, what are you doing out here? Like, don't you have businesses to run? But how do they think hanging this one boy is gonna solve it all? And don't get me wrong, like, I think there's really, really powerful themes here. This idea that one person, it can be either really does do something bad, like committing a crime, or does, just makes a mistake, whether it be doing the wrong thing for the right reason or whatever. But then, we use it as a reason to be prejudiced toward an entire group of people. And, you know, like I said, I don't want to make this political, but actually I feel like this is so still relevant today. Just this idea of where we form prejudices and where we form, you know, just basic types of discrimination toward entire people groups, maybe solely based on the actions of a few.
Right. And I think maybe the idea is we can send them a message that if you do this, this will happen to you. But they get John, they put him up on a horse, they put the noose around his neck and everything. And Dr. Mike's like, you know, infuriated and is like
screaming at Olive, do something.
Yeah,
Olive's like, I can't.
And who shows up but Sully with his tomahawk and Kid Cole with his gun. And I feel like we haven't seen Sully this whole episode.
Yeah, actually, man. Sully is kind of a minor character in this episode. He's had very few lines even just in the church.
I don't like it.
You know, well, I'll tell you why. You can only have so many storylines, man, and we got Johnny Cash. And the show's called Dr. Quinn.
You right. Yeah, he throws his tomahawk to release the noose from John's neck, and they're like, okay, we're having a trial tomorrow. The marshal's coming tomorrow. Chill out. We're going to have a trial. And then as soon as we find out for that, we find out, just kidding, the judge is not coming at all. He can't come, but he has appointed Kid Cole as his proxy to be his representative to have a trial. And
when we go into the trial, it opens with Jake as the prosecutor. And I'm like, why is Jake prosecuting? He's a stinking barber.
He has many talents, and this is one of them.
It's not his cow. He's not a rancher. I mean...
You know that somebody's going to write us and be like, actually, during this time period, and we're going to look really stupid right now.
No, well, and listen, it's the same thing with Robert E., you know, being the carpenter. Like, I get it. We have recognizable characters that we want to see. Like, it would be really confusing if we had these random people just do these roles. But I can't help but be like, why in the world is the barber giving the prosecutor's
He's
statement?
also not the most... He's very biased. We know this already. Like
100%.
So, yeah.
What is Jake not considered in this town? Barber, doctor, lawyer, prosecutor.
Town hanger-outer.
But president of the I'm gonna judge you club.
I'm gonna stand here and lean on my pole outside my shop and
tell you why you're wrong.
Okay, don't come at us, guys. We like Jake. He's just not the most likable character right now, okay? He does have his moments in later seasons.
Well, and actually one of his arguments I kind of mentioned earlier is what I think part of this motivation is. He feels this is vigilante justice. We have a right. We've hung people in the past for breaking the law. And that is how we do things here. This should be no different. You kill a cow, you steal a cow, you are put to death. And Hank's like, okay, let's go hang him. And
like, sorry, let's let him speak. Let's let John say something.
Sheriff Cole. We haven't really commented on... I think Johnny Cash does a really good job. Sometimes I'm like, is this Johnny Cash, though, just playing Johnny Cash, the lawyer man? But I think in this part, he does a really good job of being like, I want to hear both sides of the story. You know, it's not all about you. And so they give John the opportunity to plead his own case, in which it's very simple, but I like the way that it's written.
I do too.
It's simple. You don't know what it's like to lose hope, and I'm sorry.
Please forgive me.
Please forgive me.
Yeah.
Which I mean that.
Which at this point,
what else can
also
you say?
like we haven't seen him. He's had broken English in the first place. Ingrid's, translated earlier. So the fact that, she steps in to remind him of the word hope, but enough to be able to be like, I'm sorry, please forgive me.
Yeah.
For sure. And then we get this kind of Dr. Mike monologue that is quite...
She doesn't...
Would I forget?
Matthew then confesses to everyone.
Oh, how did I forget that?
Which I wrote down. Matthew literally says... It was my idea, like, I helped him do it. And then Matthew says, if you hang anyone, hang me. And this is I have a writing nitpick here. Because he goes, if you hang anyone, hang me. And Dr. Mike steps up and she says, I do wish you'd listen to Matthew. And I'm like, wait.
Hang my son.
Wait, he just told them to hang him. I don't know if he had more of a line there or I don't know, but it seemed a little disjointed there.
Right. She's like trying to back up the principle of what he's saying.
Yes.
But like, I do see that, like, if you're focusing on that and then you hear her be like, listen to him, we should do that.
Yeah, on the page, what literally she just told them to listen to is hang me.
Right.
Go ahead, you can talk about the monologue and I have some things to say too.
Well, I mean, she states that the reality is they saw someone they both really care about, speaking of Ingrid. They saw that she was starving and they wanted to do something about it. They obviously didn't handle it well, but that's the reality. And then she kind of goes on and gives kind of a personal experience where she says, like, I love this town. I love the people in it. I want this town to be a safe place for my children, But basically this moment right here decides what kind of town this is going to be, what kind of people we are. Are we going to murder someone because they saw their family starving and they wanted to do something about it, or are we gonna not,
I like that the first thing she does in her speech is acknowledge, like, they did the wrong thing. Like, no one here is saying it was okay for them to steal and kill the cow.
Right.
And I like that acknowledgement. Like, that's not what this is about. This isn't about whether they had a right to do that. They didn't. This is about they did the wrong thing, but they did it for a really good reason. that they had hungry loved ones. And I really feel that this speech is almost a challenge to herself and to all the people in that room. Like, and it's not just a challenge to be like, we need to be good, but it's like, we should help people who are in need instead of looking at this boy and seeing his crime. Like, why aren't we looking at this boy and seeing, like,
issue?
There are people starving and
in our town.
Yeah.
And I like how she says, like, whether you've been here 10 years, you've been here a year, you've been here a month, whether you're from Sweden, whether you're from Ireland, whether you're from Boston.
Yeah. And I think it's a challenge to the people in that room, but I also think the really beautiful thing is that it's a challenge to the viewers, right? Are you going to live with selflessness? Or are you living your whole life where all you think about is yourself and how the things around you impact you? Instead of looking around you and seeing hurting people, seeing people in need, and saying, I have an opportunity to do something about this.
Right.
And it's a very spelled out message, like a lot of times I like it when there are subtle messages in stories, but I think for this episode and the theme of this episode, this is a very spelled out message, and it's so beautiful, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it is a challenge that is never going to grow old. And it is never going to become less relevant than
I was going to say, it's
now.
Exactly. Extremely relevant.
And then Olive just says she's going to drop the charges, and I'm like, wait, what?
Basically, the episode's over. I'm like, sorry, what? This whole time she has been being like, I can't do anything, and then she's like, I'm gonna get in front of the whole town because this speech moved me so deeply that she's like, I'm gonna drop the charges. And she does, and she tells them that they're gonna have to work it off.
It's a very like Deus Ex Machina or whatever, like this idea of like in a story where someone just comes in and makes everything okay.
Better.
And I'm like, it's, in a way, it makes the ending a little less satisfying.
No, I feel like we've spent like the whole episode on this thing, and then it's like over right after that.
I don't know necessarily how they would have done it
differently,
other than maybe, I don't know, like the because they gave Sheriff Cole, this opportunity to judge, or, just this, what if the town had come forward and, because we don't know what this is actually going to mean for the rest of the immigrants, right? Like the way that they treated them. And that's something I would have liked to see, like Ingrid and John were the only immigrants who were at the trial, just like see this opportunity to realize like, we've really treated not just this kid badly, but all of them. And that's just my opinion of how I think for me it would have felt like a more rounded, more satisfying ending. And even I think Olive makes a comment to Dr. Mike that's like, you'd make a mighty fine lawyer. And I'm like, I don't actually think that that's totally right, because I think her speech was definitely emotionally charged and not like, it wasn't based on evidence. It wasn't based on law. Like, it was more just like,
it was
look into your heart and be a better person.
It was Olive's way of being like, that was super convincing that it made me.
And it was don't get me wrong, like, you just heard me rave. I loved her speech. I just don't know that speech would ever qualify as like a lawyer's.
But it's actually kind of nice to see Dr. Mike and Olive have a nice moment, because we've seen so much conflict between them before. Like, it's almost like where I was like, are they gonna hug? And it's like, no, they're not gonna hug, but they do kind of have a moment.
And I think another aspect of the whole town is kind of like, okay, and I'm like, are we still sure that we're not going to have that vigilante justice, like that Jake or Hank or might still be like, I still think he deserves to die, whatever.
I mean,
that
probably.
They don't really give us closure in that. So I think those are just areas where I could see improvement, but all in all, like I said, I really love the message of that scene and what it stands for. And I think like I said, Johnny Cash, this was a big part of his and his second wife, June Carter. Like they were really big advocates for standing up for the poor and those who were in need. And just that I really see that a lot of what they stood for in their heart was kind of poured into the idea of this episode. Which also, you know, then when Kid Cole decides to leave, I don't know, we don't get full closure with that either, because he doesn't even say, like, it's for his health. He just kind of says, I don't know, I just need a trade. I would have liked it to be like, oh, he was so moved that he's like, you know, I really would like to become an actual lawman. Because he makes a comment earlier, like, I've never been on this side of the law.
Right.
But actually, I think he could do a lot being on that side of the law, you know? So I think there's some plot holes there, or just some, maybe not even plot holes, maybe some missed opportunities.
Definitely. Our final scene is back at the homestead, and Dr. Mike and Sully walk up to the kids who have Byron, and they're just explaining, like, she is a wild animal. She needs to be back in the wild. We've done everything we can to help her, but we're gonna give her her spirit, and we're gonna send her back to her home. Which, I don't know. I feel like I like those little teaching moments with, like, kids and adults, because I feel like our parents did that a lot with us.
Yeah. Well, and I like Sully actually says, you remember what I taught you about the Cheyenne belief that we only take what you need.
Yeah.
And you don't need, you know, to have this animal in captivity. Like, what does she need? She needs to be free. And, I love it. From an animal perspective, obviously, like, I love it. But then also...
You mean like an animal lover perspective?
That's it, like an animal...
You said an animal perspective, and I'm like, oh, please, do tell me about your previous life as an animal and how this made you feel.
Yeah, you know, I was a hedgehog. I'm just kidding.
What the heck? Literally, what in the world?
No. Yeah, from an animal lover perspective, yeah, just that idea of doing what's best for the animal often is not what necessarily we want, you know. One thing so we have this subplot, right, of Brian learning how to love something and let it go because he loves it, and do what's best for Byron the female deer. And then we have this main storyline, which is about caring for those in need and seeking opportunities to help and step up when people need you. And so I wonder where the balance between those two storylines are, right? Because Byron, right, they took her in, they healed her, and then they sent her on her path, you know, to live her life. And then there's this idea, like, the immigrants, like, seeing people in need and stepping up and helping them the opportunity you can. I don't know, like, I feel like there's a way that they tie together, but then they also are kind of two different paths. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That was just something I was reflecting on in the episode.
They do.
By the way,
What?
That last scene, Joe Lando's eyes are so blue.
Wow. Can I have you... Well, I guess we are recording. I was like, can I get that on... You record that? You're saying that, but we're being recorded. Wow.
I was like, oh my gosh, his eyes are so blue.
He does... There's this moment where the camera, like, pans to him, and it's, like, insinuated that he's looking at Dr. Mike and Brian, and he kind of, like, nods or whatever, and it is, like, very, like, close-up of his face. But that's our shot, and Dr. Mike is hugging Brian, and it's a sweet family moment. Sweet. Yes. Love when they end with... I don't care if it's corny. I like those sweet little family moments at the end.
What is your favorite episode What is your favorite episode? What is your favorite scene in this episode?
Ooh. I actually did not think about this before we started recording. I think... I mean, I hate to be obvious, but I think it's probably Dr. Mike's speech during the trial. I like how she, because before we're like, oh, she obviously knows what he did was wrong, but she doesn't ever, I don't know, because of her actions afterward, we're kind of like, okay, but, like, trying to pay for it isn't, like, rectifying the situation. So I'm glad that she says that she knows it's wrong. But I don't know, I like the whole thing how she's like, it doesn't matter we all are in this town. We all make up this town. It doesn't matter if you've been like me. Like, I don't know when she said a year, if she's referring to herself, but it's probably closer to that time. 10 years, doesn't matter if you're from Sweden or Boston. Like, what kind of person and what kind of town do we want to be? I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. That's cliche. Sorry.
No, actually, if you chose that one, then I like that one too, but I'll go with, I also like the ending, where, Sully being like only taking what you need and caring for others. And I like the ending. I think both scenes carry really powerful messages, which leads us to our ranking. Where do you want this to go on the list of...
Just to recap, our current standing.
Number one
is the pilot. Episode 1.
Number two, The Visitor.
Episode 3.
Number three,
Episode 2.
Epidemic.
4th place. I'm pretty sure I was like the deciding
You were.
factor last time, so tell me your thoughts, friend.
I think it's better than The Epidemic. Is it better than The Visitor? I think because the theme is more universal than The Visitor, right? The Visitor was a lot about like family and loving people, who hurt you.
Loving people.
No, like
yeah. I know what you mean.
There was this whole thing of like they both couldn't be what each other needed to be, but they still could love each other. I think this episode, I don't know that it's as well of a crafted episode as The Visitor. Like, I felt like The Visitor was a really clean episode, but I feel like as far as message goes, I feel like it's a better episode than The Visitor.
So you're saying number 2?
But maybe not. Story-wise, I don't know that it's as good. What do you think?
I really like The Visitor, so I'm probably the wrong person to ask.
Okay, we can go 3.
You're gonna make me the
I'm okay with it.
Again?
Listen, if I feel really strongly about one, I'll let you know. But I'm okay with it.
Oh, I know you will. I know you will. I agree. I think like the storyline, the message is great. The way it's
it's not as neat and clean and tidy as an episode.
And I just feel like the whole episode is like building up to this thing, and then at the end it's like, okay, done.
Yeah,
which is fine. It's nice when it's...
Like I said, I think it's not as satisfying as an ending.
Right. Wow, so episode... Wow, so episode... Oh my gosh, I just did it twice. Wow, what's wrong with me?
Keeping that in.
I bet you are. Episode 4 in the bag. Honestly,
Applause.
I've been really looking forward to doing this, even though y'all pray for me. I'm in the middle of cardiology module in PA school, and it's kicking my butt. So if anybody has any advice on how to read EKGs, let me know. But no, I have been looking forward to this, and it's been really, like we already said, it's been so fun to read your responses and hear from you guys. We were hoping for some interaction, but I was not expecting to this level, so you guys are amazing.
Yeah, we've really been blessed and blown away by the Dr. Quinn fandom. So I actually wanted to throw out also an idea for future ways that listeners can interact with us in the future. Another podcast that I listen to is by the amazing ladies at Fascination and Frustration, and they actually have multiple podcasts, but something that they do in one of their podcasts, and so I want to give credit to them, is that at the end of their discussions about certain episodes, they ask listeners to write in with lessons. They call it the lessons game, where they invite listeners to write in lessons that they think characters learned in this particular episode. So we would love to hear from you guys, whether it be via our new Facebook, our Twitter at Not a Lady Podcast, our Instagram at Not a Lady Podcast, our website at it's notaladypodcast.weebly.com, Weebly spelled Weebly, or our email. Feel free to, and you can get all that information on our website, but write in any lessons that you think characters learned in this particular episode. And it can be silly lessons, serious lessons. Of course, we still want to hear from you. any opinions you have on things we discussed. We just really enjoy reading what you guys have to say and connecting with you. So please don't hesitate to write in. And if you do write in, your comment might be chosen to be discussed at the beginning of our next podcast.
Episode 5.
Do you know what that episode is called?
Let me Google it real fast. I don't know, do you?
Yes, the next episode, episode 5, is The Healing.
It's a good one, you guys. Make sure you guys tune in for episode 5. We are recording bi-weekly, so make sure you have your streaming service ready to go for when that episode comes out. And until then, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.